So this week I didn't have an opportunity to get out and fly too much. I've really been focusing on fixing the Intrepid 5-inch that crashed last week. I do want to send a shout out to Airblade, specifically because I messaged them on Facebook with a copy of the DVR recording of the crash, just to give them some feedback on the frame and help them, improve it for future use. The response I got absolutely blew me away. They were super helpful. They offered to send me a replacement frame, which I received in only a few days. I believe I messaged them on Monday night, and Tuesday morning I received a tracking number, and by end of day Wednesday I had the replacement frame and got to work. So yeah, I love supporting local businesses for this specific reason. Airblade's based out of Vancouver. I'm in Canada, so it's super helpful. If you haven't checked them out, head over to airbladeuav.com and check them out. They've got an awesome selection of everything you need for FPV. To be honest, they haven't paid for me to say that at all. That's my genuine feeling of just doing business with them and buying a few different products and working with their support to address some minor concerns. I don't have that many subscribers, so it's pretty clear no one would be sponsoring just yet. But maybe you can help me out by hitting that subscribe button. Last week I mentioned getting a set of goggles that had a built-in DVR so you could record your FPV feed. I've been using some Fatshark Dominators, which I still absolutely love. But one thing I've noticed is I configured the DVR to auto record, and I'm ending up with a lot of static on the SD card. So what I would recommend is, instead of just enabling auto record and hoping it's going to capture your entire session, manually start and stop the recordings before and after your flights, just because that way you don't have to retroactively go into the SD card and clean it up, removing recordings with static or edit down videos that have a lot of static in them. I found after doing this on one of my SD cards, I ended up actually saving about 1 to 2 gigs. So yeah, rather than using the auto record functionality, just manually start and stop recordings before and after your flights. Something I realized this past week was just how much money I have saved from buying used. Not only that, but the amount of value I've received from buying from people who have upgraded their gear and looking to get rid of old gear, or were just getting out of the hobby. Buying used can be a fantastic way to save money, which means you can get more gear, which means when your quad crashes, you're not as frustrated with having to repair it. The other thing I realized was it's much easier to learn to fix something that already works and already flies than it is to try and build it up from scratch. At least for me, I find it a lot easier to be able to take a quad that's already running and upgrade small components in it, or after a crash, replace a motor or replace components on it. So yeah, really consider buying used if you're looking to get into the hobby versus buying brand new right out of the gate. Another thing I would recommend is buying a TinyWhoop or an Inductrix or TinyBee, any one of those indoor micro quads. I picked one up end of last week off of Kijiji, and I've absolutely been loving it. It's a fantastic way to practice flying, as well as practice in bad weather when you can't take your quad outdoors. Unlike the smaller 2 or 2.5 inch quads, it doesn't have the weight that those quads have, so crashing into walls or bouncing off furniture doesn't leave you sucking air through your teeth, wondering what you've broken, or if you're going to need to buy new parts to replace things. It's also incredibly fun to play around with if you have cats or other pets, because these small quads are they're not even quads. These small drones are just so safe. They've been designed with safety as a principal aspect in mind. It's fun to play around with your pets, chase them around the house, have your pets chase you around the house while you're flying FPV. So yeah, if you're getting into FPV, I strongly recommend getting TinyWhoop, Inductrix, TinyBee, any of these, the micro indoor quads that you can just practice on indoors. The last lesson I want to highlight that I've learned this past week is just how important community is when you're getting into a hobby like this that has a semi-steep learning curve. Luckily, early on, I was able to find a group of local enthusiasts that are into all types of RC, primarily quads, but also planes and helicopters and stuff like that. And I found it's far less stressful knowing where you can turn to for help and getting it, being able to ask questions that most of the time you don't even know how to ask the question correctly, you don't even know the information you're looking for, but being able to leverage someone else's expertise and have them at minimum point you in the right direction for what to look at. I'm a big believer in the teach a man to fish versus give a man to fish, and I found being able to rely on a local community is really, really helpful for that. So yeah, first thing I would say is before you even go out and get any equipment is find a local community where you can ask questions, really understand, take some recommendations on what equipment to buy, um, what to avoid buying, and stuff like that. It's incredibly helpful and it is such a stress reliever knowing that you have somewhere to go to ask questions from people who have already been there. That's it for this week's video. This upcoming week, I'm going to be focusing on fixing a video issue I'm having with my Intrepid. I've got the frame all assembled, but I'm having an interesting video issue where whenever I arm it or any of the motors spin up, I get a whole bunch of video noise. So hopefully next week I'm going to have that as part of my video on what the issue was. So if you are having a similar issue, stay tuned, hit that subscribe button, and check back next week. Thanks for watching.